Shabbat Shalom to the 12 tribes of the chosen people, the bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, and his bloodline children, according to Bible prophecy, scattered into the four corners of the earth through oppression and slavery. They are called the children of Israel. Greetings. Greetings to the 144,000 priests of the Most High that are out of the 12 tribes, who are being prepared now and helping to prepare a people to meet Messiah. Greetings. Greetings and blessings upon the Gentiles, who also are seeking the Hebrew Messiah, who we call YHWH, a Mashiach, that the Bible calls Jesus Christ, and are seeking to be grafted in to the scattered flock of the chosen people. Greetings. Blessings upon those that are working in the healthcare field and the first responders, trying every day to save human lives, even at the risk of their own. Greetings upon those that pick up garbage and dirty things for us to keep our streets and sidewalks disease-free and clean, and those that do the humble jobs of making deliveries for our convenience. Double blessings on those trying to help deliver and rescue the victims of child pornography, the victims of child molestation, the victims of child prostitution, and also the adult victims of prostitution, pornography, sex slavery, and human trafficking. And double curses upon the perverts and profiteers that traffic in this human misery and degradation. Finally, blessings upon the homeless. Nearly 600,000 men, women, and children on the streets of the United States tonight in February. And millions around the world in similar or worse conditions. Blessings upon them, for theirs is the kingdom, on those whose hearts have been touched to help them. Greetings and blessings on the chat, Brother Yakoba, Sister Isha, Naviska 23, Brother Mark, Hebrew, Ricky Boyd, Sister Wade, Brother Hines, Superstar, and all others. Greetings and blessings to all of you on this Shabbat. We have been studying from what I consider the most important book on planet Earth, the only true book on planet Earth for the chosen people to guide us in prophetic utterance through these last days of the history of this planet system that we're in, the word of the Most High. And we have been studying the book of Revelation from this book. And we are now getting ready to embark on the study of the seven trumpets. We have went through the seven churches. We have went through the seven seals. And now we begin the seven trumpets. As I alluded to you oftentimes during the course of the study, the seven churches and the seven seals and the seven trumpets move in harmonious fashion through history, beginning at the Advent, the original Advent, the first appearance of Messiah in human flesh as a man, and going to Messiah's return, which this book shows us is being revealed to be very, very soon. Praise the Most High. And so we are starting today in Revelation chapter 8. Now, I'm going to start again. This is one of those times where we're going to start at the verse and then go back through the scriptures and then come back to the verses. So we're dealing with seven trumpets today. All right. We'll probably get through four of them tonight and then start going through the last three by the grace of the Most High tomorrow. So we studied, the last thing we studied was the seven seals, as we talked about. And we saw how the 144,000 and the return of the Messiah are being mentioned in the sixes, the sixth church and the sixth seal. And now we'll see them again, obviously, in the sixth trumpet. We mentioned how in Revelation 13, the threefold union of man-made religion is a sign is given to it as 666. And it says a sign of a man. Why? Because the sign of man is 6, because man was created by Creator Yah on the 6th day of the 7 days of creation. Man was created on the 6th day. What was created on the 7th day? In fact, here's the first question of the night. The Most High, the Bible says, created the earth in 7 days. What was created on the 7th day? The 6th day was man. But there was something created on the 7th day. What did he create on the 7th day? There is a 7th day. And so there was something that was created in 7 days. That's right. He created a 24-hour period of rest. That's what he created. In fact, let's look at it. Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2, beginning at verse 1 and going down to verse 3. Genesis chapter 2, beginning at verse 1 and going down to verse 3. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the 7th day, Yah ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. And Yah blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his works which Yah created and made. So all animate objects were made in 6 days. The 7th day was simply a time period that was called holy or set apart from the rest of the days. Okay. And again, let's look at the covenant in Exodus chapter 20, the covenant given in Exodus chapter 20. And in the middle of the covenant, there is this same command that's given to us as part of the covenant. This is Exodus chapter 20 from verse 8 through 11. Exodus chapter 20 from verses 8 through 11. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of Yahweh thy Most High. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, and the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So, 6s, he made all animate objects, including man. He made man on the 6th day. 7th was the finishing, the completion, where he set apart a day of rest, which tells us something. In the 6th church, in the 6th trumpet, in the 6th seal, the Most High is bringing an answer to man. In the 7th church, in the 7th seal, in the 7th trumpet, he is completing everything and bringing rest. Does that make sense? Okay, he's finishing everything and bringing rest. Okay, that's the completion. All right, everybody, see that? Okay, so now, with that in mind, we understand we're now in the 6s, and that's why the answer to the threefold union of the beast, the dragon, and the false prophet, which is led by the Vatican, the devil himself, and the United States, Christianity, is the 144,000. That's Yah's crew that answers man. Okay, that's his team that answers man. It's represented in Noah in the ark. It's represented in Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah that stood and refused to bow to Nebuchadnezzar's image. It's represented in Elijah, who stood alone against the northern kingdom led by Ahab and Jezebel. It's represented in these people as the people that come and try, well, that come and bring a message to man, right? So now, with that in mind, let's go back to Revelation chapter 8, where these trumpets begin, and let's continue our study. Revelation chapter 8, with that in mind. Revelation chapter 8. Okay, now, we talked about chapter 7. Before we read chapter 8, I want to just say one more thing about chapter 7. If you recall, the question was asked in chapter 6, who shall be able to stand? That was the question that was asked regarding the return of the Messiah. Then we saw the 144,000. We saw an angel rise back up to the sky that had come down with a seal. And when he was rising back up, he was telling or commanding 4 angels who are on 4 corners of earth to say, hold the destructive winds that are coming. I'm paraphrasing. Until we have sealed our servants, Yah's servants, in their forehead. And then he said, I heard the number of them were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. And we discovered as we studied the word that those are Levites that represent each tribe, because in Israel, every tribe had a crew of Levites. Okay, every tribe. That's why it says of all the tribes. We looked at Ezekiel, we looked at Leviticus, we looked at different scriptures, we looked at Malachi, and it showed the Levites. Okay. And so these are 144,000 Levites that are given to teach the word, to get the people prepared. Then we saw a great multitude, which no man could number. And we noted that they were standing on the sea of glass, which is representing the Father's throne. Before the sea of glass is the Father's throne, with Messiah, with the 4 beasts and the elders, the 24 elders and the angels, and they had palms in their hands. And we noted that that was a sign of the Feast of Tabernacles. And why was that a sign of the Feast of Tabernacles? Because we know that Messiah has a prophetic sign in each feast, of which there's only, I'm not going to say the number. How many feasts are there that the Most High has given to Israel? How many feasts did he say all males should appear before him? 3. That's right, Brother Mark. There's not 10, there's not 7, there's 3. Each feast has a prophetic sign in Messiah. Let's go over that very quickly. I'm not going to go over all the scriptures because y'all know we did it. We did it when we studied the feast. If you want that study, it's in the book of Deuteronomy. You can go on the Raw Hebrew website or Raw Hebrew Remnant YouTube channel, and you can look up. It's there. You can find it there. It's in the book of Deuteronomy. We studied it. We studied at different times, actually, the feast. Now, let's go over very quickly, though. The Passover feast, which is also the Feast of Unleavened Bread, represents Messiah as the Lamb of Yah that would pay the penalty of sin for Israel. Not only for Israel, but for all those that are grafted in to Israel and the strangers and Gentiles that dwell among us. Okay? That's the sign of the Passover. He is the Passover lamb. During the course of that time, the first 7th-day Sabbath that time goes through, because it's a 7-day period to Passover, the day after that is a wave offering where they wave The early barley is the barley, beginning of barley season. So they waved the barley, okay? And that represented the first fruits of Messiah's resurrection, which we know the Bible tells us after he was resurrected, saints came out of the graves in Israel, okay? And he took them with him as the first fruit. It was waved before the Most High to be accepted, which is why also when he come out the grave, he told Miriam at first, the first thing he told her, don't touch me, I have not yet ascended to my Father. Then later, he allowed them to touch him. Okay, but his Father had to accept him as the sacrifice. Okay, then we see the first fruits. Then they count 49 days, which is 7 Sabbaths from that first wave offering. And then you get to the 50th day, they call it Pentecost, for 50. Also, the Feast of the First Fruits. That's where Messiah ascended with all of those with him that was raised. Was that sign there? And the early reign of the Father's Spirit being poured out on the disciples, the apostles, and the people that were in that upper room. 120 people received the Father early reign Spirit power. Then we saw that the Bible told us there was going to be a long period between then and when the sanctuary will be cleansed. Daniel 8:14. We saw that between the second feast and the last feast, there's a very important event. The event begins on the first day of the 7th month of the Hebrew year, where there are trumpets being blown and there's a solemn assembly. The trumpet sound is heard, and there's a solemn assembly to prepare the people for what would come 10 days later on the 10th day of the 7th month, which is called the Day of Atonement. That is the day that the Israelite sins as a nation is taken off of them and replaced with the perfect righteousness of the Father. The high priest enters into the most holy place where the tabernacle of the covenant is, and he represents this. He comes there with the blood of the lamb to represent atonement of Messiah, who is our high priest. We studied and saw that this started in 1843 and finished in 1844. It's supposed to be the Day of Atonement. 1 day equals 1 year. Then we saw that 5 days later, or 5 years later in prophetic time, is called the Feast of Tabernacles. The Feast of Tabernacles is the Feast of Ingathering, or the Feast of the Harvest, the end of the year harvest. This is representing the return of Messiah to gather his saints. And that feast lasts 7.5 days. And the first day is a Sabbath, and the 8th day is a Sabbath. Which brings us to Revelation chapter 8 and verse 1, which we studied last week, but we're still reviewing. Revelation chapter 8 and verse 1. And when he had opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. Prophetically speaking, an hour is 1/24th of a day. So you take 1/24th of a year and you get 15 days. But it said half an hour. So you divide 15 into 2 and you have 7.5 days. The number of days for the Feast of Tabernacles. The number of days for us to celebrate on the Sea of Glass with the Messiah. Okay? And now we start the 7 trumpets. Now, let's read. I'm going to read verse 2 alone first. And I'm going to do that for a reason. We're going to come back and read everything in context, as we always do. But I want to start with verse 2 for a reason. I'll show you why in a moment. So let's look at Revelation chapter 8 and verse 2. And I saw 7 angels which stood before Yah, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Now, here's another question. what do the trumpets represent in the Bible? When you hear the sound of a trumpet, now it's obviously a warning sound, right? It's a warning. Israel was given the trumpets to warn the people something was going on. Every time something happened, they did a warning. But what else does it represent? It does represent a warning. But what else does it represent? There is something else very important here. That's right. It is the sound of Messiah when he is making an announcement. Where do we get that from? Well, first, let's start in the same book of Revelation. And let's look at Revelation chapter 1. John was on the Isle of Patmos, remember? And he was in the spirit and he heard something. Revelation chapter 1, beginning at verse 10 and going down to verse 12. Actually, from verse 10 down to verse 13. Sorry. I was in the spirit on Yahweh's day and heard behind me a great voice as of a trumpet. See that? Saying, I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, and what thou seest write in the book, and send it unto the 7 churches which are in Asia, unto Ephesus, and unto Smyrna, and unto Pergamos, and unto Thyatira, and unto Sardis, and unto Philadelphia, and unto Laodicea. And I turned to see the voice that spake with me, and being turned, I saw 7 golden candlesticks. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. So we see that was the voice of Messiah. Also here in Revelation chapter 4 and verse 1. Revelation chapter 4 and verse 1. Notice what it says here. And after this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. Watch this. And the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet talking with me, which said, come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter. So we know now who that was, right? So he heard that same trumpet voice tell him, come up here. I'm going to show you something that's going to happen later. But wait a minute. Where else? Let's go to Exodus chapter 19. Exodus chapter 19, one of my favorite places to see this. Exodus chapter 19. Exodus 19. Let's see. I'm going to start at verse 1 because I want to get a good context here. I'm going to start at verse 1. This is when the Most High himself met the children of Israel at Mount Sinai. Okay. This is where Yah himself met the children of Israel at Mount Sinai. So let's look at this in context, beginning at verse 1, Exodus 19, beginning at verse 1. And I'm going to start at verse 1 and I'm going to read down to verse 19. In the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai, for they were departed from Rephidim and were come to this desert of Sinai and had pitched in the wilderness. And there Israel camped before the mount. And Moses went up unto Yah, and Yahweh called unto him out of the mountain, saying, thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now, therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. And Moses came and called for the elders of the people, and laid before their eyes all these words which Yahweh commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, all that Yahweh has spoken we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto Yahweh. And Yahweh said unto Moses, lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto Yahweh. And Yahweh said unto Moses, go unto the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and be ready against the third day. For the third day, Yahweh will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. And thou shalt set bounds unto the people round about, saying, take heed to yourselves, that ye go not up into the mount, or touch the border of it. Whosoever toucheth the mount shall be surely put to death. There shall not an hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot through. Whether it be beast or man, it shall not live. When the trumpet soundeth long, then they shall come up to the mount. So the sign that they were going to come up from the Father was a trumpet sound. They were going to hear a trumpet sound. Okay. And Moses went up from Mount Sinai unto the people. Moses went down from Mount Sinai unto the people and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said unto the people, be ready against the third day. Come not at your wives. And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet Yah, and they stood at the nether part of the mount. And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because Yahweh descended upon it in fire. And the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and Yah answered him by a voice. So you can see Father was on the top of Sinai, but he wasn't by himself, was he? He received the announcement of Father from Messiah. The Bible tells us no man has seen Yah at any time. The only begotten Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, he hath declared him. That's part of Messiah's job, is to declare his Father. As he did when he came to the earth. Everything he did, he said, I don't do anything except my Father commands me. I don't speak anything except as my Father tells me what to speak. So the trumpet sound represents Messiah's voice. Let's read one more part before we go back. In 2 Thessalonians, no, I'm sorry, 1 Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians, verse 16 and 17 and 18. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. I'm sorry. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16, 17, and 18. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, 16, 17, and 18. Notice what it says. For the Master himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of Yah. And the dead in Messiah shall rise first. See, a trumpet sound. Messiah. And remember, Messiah said he's not coming by himself. He said he's coming at the right hand of power. So Father's coming, Messiah announcing. Okay? Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Master in the air. So shall we ever be with the Master. Wherefore comfort one another with these words. See? So there you have it. So you have the voice of the trumpet is a warning sound announcing something. Usually it's announcing the Father. So now in Revelation we have what? 7 trumpets. So you have Messiah's, a symbol of Messiah's voice warning us. Okay, so far, he's warning us. All right. So you remember the 7 churches represents our fathers as they are in the first century, from the announcement of Messiah, his first appearance, and the gospel, the true gospel of the Hebrews. Then we went to the seven seals, which seals a book that represents all of the saved people of the kingdom, and then going through the time periods of the unsealing of that book. Okay? Well, here is a warning message to Yah's people in each time period. Okay? A warning message, a warning about something happening in each time period. Okay, so far, right? So now, again, let's take this even a little deeper now. It's a warning message from Messiah, okay, to his chosen people, his servants, his disciples, from the first century all the way to the return. Okay, so it's going to go through all the same seven time periods, but it's now warning us. Okay, now, okay, we got that. Okay, good. So now each warning is going to represent a church and a seal, right? So you're going to get an idea from the churches and seals what we're dealing with here with the trumpets, but it's going to come at us from a different angle because it's telling us about what's happening around us that's going to affect us. Okay? All right. Here we go. Starting with the first trumpet. Revelation. I'm going to start again at verse 1. And before I get to the first trumpet, the first trumpet actually is verse 7. So let's go before we do that. Actually, the first trumpet is actually, verse 7, right? Before we do that, a part of this warning is there's a, what's the word I'm looking for? There is a prelude, a disclaimer, something that happens before the warning to set the tone. You know how when we started with Revelation chapter 1, I told you it set the tone for the book. I told you how it's the revelation of the Messiah that Yah gave him to show unto his servants things that must shortly come to pass, and he sends it by an angel, and it's the prelude for the whole book. Well, before these seven trumpets, there's a mini prelude. Okay? And it makes sense, right? Because this is a warning to us about the things that are here, the things that already happened, and again, the things that are coming, the three time periods. What has happened already, what is happening now, and what's going to happen in the future. And now that we have gone through the churches and the seals, you know we're in the sixth part, right? So we're in the sixth trumpet right now, right? So we're going to talk about that when we get there. But for now, let's go back and look at everything that has happened in the past, because you want to know what's getting ready to happen? Know it already happened, right? You want to know what's getting ready to happen? Know what already happened, right? So let's start with the prelude here. So I'm going to start with this. I'm going to start at verse 2 for this. I'm going to go from verse 2. I'm going to go from verse 2 down to verse 6. Okay, you ready? Revelation chapter 8 from verse 2 to verse 6. And I saw seven angels which stood before Yah, and to them were given seven trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer. And there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense, which came with the prayers of the saints, ascended up before Yah out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar, and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. And the seven angels which had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound. Now, this is the theme. This is the beginning. What does all of this mean? Well, first it tells us an angel came and stood at the altar. Now, what altars are talking about? There's two altars represented in the sanctuary. And now that Messiah is the high priest, there's one of them we don't have to deal with anymore. The first one was in the court. That's where they sacrificed the animals. That was the altar of sacrifice. But remember, there's two apartments inside the sanctuary. The first one had certain furniture in it. We talked about the candlesticks, the showbread with the table, there was also an altar. And on that altar, a small altar covered in gold, incense. And the incense from that altar was supposed to be lit all the time. If you remember, Zechariah, John the Baptist's father, it was his job to light incense. So he was to go in there and light incense. He was a Levite, okay? And so it was his job to go in there of Kohath and light the incense. Remember that? And when he came in there to light the incense, remember, Gabriel was standing next to the altar. And he got scared. Remember that? So now that's where you have the incense, where there's prayers of the saints being represented. And when the high priest, whether it was Aaron or now it's after the order of Melchizedek, Messiah, when they go into the most holy place once a year, they take with them the incense, which represents the prayers of the saints. And if you remember, the 24 elders around the Father's throne, notice what they had, Revelation chapter 4. Revelation chapter 4. Let me see. No, that's not the one I want. I want chapter 5. Okay, yes, Revelation chapter 5. Revelation chapter 5. I'm going to read from Revelation chapter 5. I'm going to read from verse 5 down to verse 8. Revelation chapter 5, from verse 5 down to verse 8. And one of the elders said unto me, Weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb, as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of Yahweh sent forth into all the earth. And he came and took the book out of the right hand of him that sat upon the throne. And when he had taken the book, the 4 beasts and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, having every one of them harps and golden vials full of odors, which are the prayers of the saints. So they were involved with Messiah in the high priestly ministry. Okay. And they sung a new song. Oh, wait. No, let me not go that far. But you see, the odors represent the prayers of the saints. So here we are in chapter 8. And it says that this angel came to the altar where the prayers of the saints is represented in incense and took a censer, which we did, filled with incense. But watch what happened after that. Revelation chapter 8, verse 5. Watch this. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. So he took the censer filled with the prayers of the saints and he threw it at the earth. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? He took it and he threw it at the earth. So the saints' prayers weren't being heard in the beginning of these trumpets. Now, why would that be? There were prayers of the saints not being heard. Why would that be? Not all the saints, though. Because we know, obviously, the Most High heard the prayers of the disciples and the apostles. But we talked about who the servants were. They were Israelites. So let me ask you, if there were some Israelites whose prayers were not being heard, why would that be? There were some Israelites during the same period of time as the churches, the same period of time as the seals, whose prayers are not being heard because they had rejected Messiah. Remember, we're talking about the first century. They rejected Messiah. They were apostate. That's exactly right. So those prayers thrown back. And so here, the warning is given about evil things that's going to happen to his people Like what? Like slavery? How many of our brothers and sisters in chains were crying out to Allah when they were being tossed overboard from them slave ships? Were their prayers heard? How many of our brothers and sisters were taken to islands where they were castrated and beaten? They were crying to the Most High, whoever. Were their prayers heard? So there was a time period where prayers were not heard. You are following me? And that's what we're dealing with. Now, of course, that is extremely important as to why the six is important. Because remember what he said. Look, remember what was said in the sixth church. Remember the sixth church? Remember that one? Notice what he said in the sixth church, Revelation chapter 3. Revelation chapter 3, under Philadelphia, verse 7. Revelation 3:7. Notice what he said, Revelation 3:7. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, these things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. So he opened the door because now the sanctuary was going to start to be cleansed. And now the prayers were going to be heard. And now he was going to prepare his Levite teachers to bring his word to his chosen servants. Now, it started when the chains would take, it was a symbolic thing, actually, the Civil War. When I say symbolic, what do I mean? Well, chains were taken off the necks of the Israelite people, right? But it was only symbolic because we weren't really free. You're following me? Chains were taken off, but we were still enslaved to this day because their prophecy is going. But now, what's the difference? Now, that's right. Now we're understanding. We're being awakened. We're being awakened. Now we're understanding, right? Before, how many times have y'all thought in your mind, why is this happening to us? You Israelites, how many times have you thought when you see the history and you're like, why us? Why are we the only ones that can't start businesses like that? Why are we the only ones that are always in ghetto? Why are we the only ones that are last hired and first fired? You ever thought, did that ever cross your mind? You ever say, why? Why is that? And people have come up with this excuse and that excuse. They say, well, because we don't know how to organize ourselves, or no, we need black nationalism, or we need our own land in this land, or we need, there's always something, or we need to gather ourselves together and pool our money. How many different, you know what I'm saying? You asked that question. And now, why? Why do you know why? It's not because of me, because of the Father's Spirit now talking to us and revealing to us all of these things. That's because we're in the sixth trumpet, the sixth church, the sixth seal. Okay? Now, all during the five trumpets, I don't want y'all to get it twisted. There were always some faithful Hebrews. All through history, there were some faithful Hebrews, but they were in the minority. Is that different now? Or is it the same? You hear what I'm saying? There was always been a remnant. He always has a remnant. Remember, he told Elijah, I got 7,000 you don't know nothing about, brother. You ain't by yourself. So there's always a faithful remnant through all history. To this day, they're finding people, like I said, on the continent of Africa that have been following the Torah all the time. And they had to be repentant because they were chased out of Jerusalem into Africa, and they knew why. So you always going to have a faithful remnant, but the majority of our brothers and sisters caught that hell in an unprecedented manner. You hear what I'm saying? caught that hell in a way, like, as the Bible told us in Leviticus and Deuteronomy and Jeremiah and Ezekiel, as it told us in them books, what was going to happen to us. Right? In Hosea and Amos, as it told us what was going to happen to us. Okay? No other people in the history of the planet has it like the true Hebrews. Nobody. There's nobody even close, man. I don't want to hear. I mean, you look, there was a Holocaust, but you can't compare 6 years of that to 2,000 years. Come on now. You can't, even if 6 million, you can't compare 6 million to 300 million. Come on, man. There's nobody in history that has caught the hell we have caught. Nobody. Somebody said, well, we were poor too, or we had problems. Yeah, every people had problems. If there's a planet Earth, every people on Earth had problems. Even the children of the Yafet who are in charge, they didn't get to be in charge without going through hell first, killing each other off until one of them survived. That's how you get all the European countries, but nobody caught it the way the Hebrews caught it. That's what these 5 trumpets going to show us. Okay? Right now, praise the Most High, we are being awakened. The only reason we know this stuff is we are being awakened. We're being awakened like no generation before us. Why? Because we're the generation that's going to see the Messiah return. That's why. We're the generation that's going to see him. Okay? That's what makes us different than every generation that ever existed on the history of the earth. We're the ones that are going to see him return with the Father. We're the ones that's going to see the 7, the end of it. Okay? That's what makes us different. And the Most High called us. He could have called us into existence 100 years ago, 200 years ago. We could have been one of them in the holds of them slave ships. We could have been the original ones brought over. We could have been before that. We could have been in the siege of Jerusalem. We could have been born at any time. He had you and me born now. And he already knew before the foundation of earth you were going to exist and I was going to exist. He knows each of us intimately before we even came into existence. He called Jeremiah before he was formed in the womb. Before he was formed in the womb, he called Jeremiah. Okay, so don't sleep on the Father. He called us into existence for this time. Just like old brother told Esther, who knows if thou was brought into the kingdom for such a time as this. See what I'm saying? So here we were brought for such a time as this. Okay, that's he brought us into existence to see this. Okay, believe that. And so these trumpets represent the troubles our people were going to go through during that whole time. Okay, it represents all of that. So now that we see that, the prayers weren't being heard. There were people's prayers weren't being heard. There was millions of Israelites put on slave blocks after the Romans came in AD 70. Millions of Hebrews on slave blocks. And then thousands, tens of thousands on crosses, hung on trees. And I can't even tell you, since we've been in America, they don't even give the records of how many of us was hung up on trees with our privates cut out. Right? We don't even know, how many of us was suffered like that. We don't even know how many was the Belgian people came into Africa and cut off their hands, or how many of the African people they did that to in Jamaica, the English, or how many of the Spaniards did that too. And why you think Haiti is the most suffering the most of any country? Haiti told my wife and I were talking about Haiti told them French, we get out. Them Haitians messed them up, man. And ever since then, they've been under attack by the whole European world. That's why they're in the position they're in. Okay, that's why they're in the position they're in. But that's just showing you who we are, who we really are, and why. Okay, it's showing you all of that. Exactly. All right. So now, with that in mind, let's look at the trumpets. So let's start at verse 1, the first trumpet. Revelation chapter 8, beginning at verse 7. That's the first trumpet, okay? Ready, go? Revelation chapter 8, beginning at verse 7. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of the trees was burnt, and all the green grass was burned up. Now, I want to also tell you, when it talks about burning up stuff in these early, especially these first four trumpets, it's just a description of the power of what is coming or what came. So let me ask you all a question. When you see in the Bible hail, okay, with blood, where have you seen that before? Those of you Bible students, where have you seen hail with blood? Where have you seen it? Revelation 8:7. Well, that's where we at. Revelation 8:7. Yep. So where else have you seen it? That's right. It was in Egypt. One of the plagues placed on the Egyptians was hail mingled with fire. Right. That's very good. Okay, that's one witness. I'm gonna take you to the second witness. That's why I asked y'all, because I know y'all studying this. So that's right. So the second witness is in the Psalms. Let's look at the Psalms. David is the second witness. So Moses is the first witness, mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. David is the second witness. Of course, John himself is the third witness. So let's look at Psalms 18. Psalms 18. Okay, ready? Psalms 18. Let's see. Where do I begin here? I'm going to begin at verse. I really want to read the whole thing, but I'm not going to do that. Now, let's start at verse 7 for the sake of the number. I'm going to go from verse 7, down to verse 18. From 7 to 18. Now, I'm going to ask you all to think. This is going to give you a big hint right here, but I'm going to ask you to think about this now, okay? Ready? Okay, let's go. From 7 to 18. Psalm 18, 7 to 18. Then the earth shook and trembled. The fountains also of the hills moved and were shaken because he was wroth. There went up a smoke out of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also and came down, and darkness was under his feet. And he rode upon a cherub and did fly. Yea, he did fly upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his secret place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the sky. At the brightness that was before him, his thick clouds passed. Hailstones and coals of fire. Yahweh also thundered in the heavens, and the highest gave his voice. Hailstones and coals of fire. Yea, he sent out his arrows and scattered them, and he shot out lightnings and discomfited them. Then the channels of the waters were seen, and the foundations of the world were discovered at thy rebuke, O Yahweh, at the blast of the breath of thy nostril. He sent from above, he took me, he drew me out of many waters. He delivered me from my strong enemy and from them which hated me, for they were too strong for me. They prevented me in the day of my calamity, but Yahweh was my stay. Okay, so his voice is represented not only by thunder, but by hailstones and coals of fire. Now, we just read in Revelation 8:7 that we saw hail and fire mixed with blood cast upon the earth. It was I'm going to give you a hint now. It was the first trumpet. Now, if you look at that and you understand that they run in harmony, you had the first church and the first seal. What happened? What happened that would represent Father's voice? What happened with the first church and the first seal, and now the first trumpet that would represent Father's voice? I'm going to let y'all, I'm waiting for y'all. I'm going to wait on that one. Y'all should know that. Yeah, but the first church, yeah, Father's voice is thunder, and it was hailstones and coals of fire. But there was something that represented that in the first church and the first seal. Go back and look at it while we're talking here. Go back and look at the first church and the first seal. What do you see? All right, I'm going to go back there. I'm going to go back there. Let's go back there for a second. Let's go back there for a second. Ready? Revelation chapter 2, chapter 2, Ephesus. Okay, going to read from verse 1 down to verse 7. This is the first church. Unto the angel of the church of Ephesus write, these things saith he that holdeth the 7 stars in his right hand, who walketh in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks. I know thy works, and thy labor, and thy patience, and how thou canst not bear them which are evil, and hast tried them which say they are apostles, and are not, and hast found them liars, and has borne, and has patience, and for my name's sake has labored, and has not fainted. Nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love. Remember, therefore, from whence thou art fallen, and repent, and do the first works, or else I will come unto thee quickly, and remove thy candlestick out of his place, except thou repent. But this thou hast, that thou hatest the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of Yah. Now let's look at the first seal. Okay, first seal, Revelation chapter 6, verse 1 and 2. Revelation chapter 6, verse 1 and 2, the first seal. And I saw, and I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder. And one of the 4 beasts saying, come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse. And he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him. And he went forth conquering and to conquer. Then in the first trumpet, you see hailstones and coals of fire. That was the opening round of the gospel, the true gospel, with the early rain power given to the apostles and disciples. What it says in Revelation chapter 8, verse 7, hail and fire, that's the Father's voice in that spirit. You hear what I'm saying? So that's the Father's voice in that spirit given to the apostles and disciples. And when it say it burned up those that were unbelieving Hebrews, those that were not receiving the message, that's what it was hurting them. They were not receiving. Y'all follow me so far? So the hailstones and coals of fire, the thunder and the first love, the patience and faith, that was the early gospel, right? That's when the Messiah first gave the gospel, and he went back to the kingdom, the third heaven, and he sent the disciples with the early rain. And if you recall, the beginning of the gospel only went to the Hebrews. Remember that? It didn't go to the Gentiles. It went to the Hebrews first. And you remember that as they went to the Hebrews, and majority were rejecting the message, what were they doing? They were following the Apostle Paul everywhere he went, trying to kill him. And the Bible says that the Hebrews were scattered after they killed Stephen because of the message. They were scattered from Jerusalem. So that's what is going on here. Y'all following it? So this is the unbelieving. This is how the unbelieving Hebrews received that message. Okay, that's why I said you hate the doctrine of Nicolaitans. I hate it too. You try them that say the apostles are not. These are the unbelieving Hebrews. Okay, but the message was burning. Remember what it said when they went to go kill Stephen? What? Look what it said. Acts chapter 7. Acts chapter 7. Watch what it said. How they react before they killed Stephen, before they murdered the disciple Stephen, who was one of the deacons. Notice what happened in Acts chapter 7, verse 54. Acts 7:54. Notice what it said. When they heard these things, they were cut to the heart and gnashed on him with their teeth. That's the burnt trees and all that. They were cut to the heart. They wanted to rip him apart. Because that word, that hailstone and coals of fire was messing with them. It was the Father's message. Right? Again, let's understand what the gospel is now. The Bible definition of the gospel. It is, let me read it, let me say it very plainly. The gospel is the gospel of Jesus Christ, which Yah gave to him. Well, no, I'm sorry. I am not ashamed. I am not ashamed of the gospel of Messiah. It is the power of Yah unto salvation to all that believe, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. For therein, that is in the power, the righteousness of Yah is revealed. So the gospel is Messiah revealing Father's righteousness. The Spirit is of the Father. Messiah said, when I go back to the Father, I'm going to pray to him and ask him to give you another spirit from him. And that spirit going to teach you, going to guide you. That's the Father's Spirit. That's why there's no Trinity. The Holy Spirit is not any entity by itself. It's the Father's Spirit. And so that message of the gospel represents the Father's message through Messiah. And that's why I say it's the gospel. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, because even though it's the Father's message, he proclaimed it through the Messiah. Okay? That's why Paul said, he said another time, that Messiah died for our sins according to the scriptures by my gospel. He said he's bearing witness of that message. It is the Father's Spirit. So when we give the gospel, the true gospel, it's coming through Messiah, but it's the Father's message. Because the righteousness of the Father is being revealed. Why? Because this whole thing that we're dealing with, right now in terms of the earth's spiritual war, is between Satan and the Father. Remember, he said, I'm going to be God. I'm going to take that throne. Okay, that's what so he's fighting. You know what the Father said? Don't eat that fruit. You're going to die. The devil said, you ain't going to die. You eat this fruit, you're going to be a God. So this is a conflict between Father and Satan. Messiah is representing Father. Okay, so the Messiah is representing the gospel of the Father, so that the Father's power and righteousness is being revealed. That's the power of the Spirit. That's the gospel. That's what happened with the first trumpet. The warning sound was for those rejecting that message, which is the majority of our fathers reject that message. It was a remnant that received the truth. The majority reject that message. Okay, which is also gave the rejection, Paul said, gave opportunity for the Gentiles to come to this truth. And he said, if the falling away caused y'all to get the truth, what's going to happen when they come back to their fullness? It's going to be life from the dead. Okay, praise the Most High. So, okay, y'all got this so far. I think we only have time for that one, the first one tonight. We have to come back to the second and third and fourth by the grace of the Most High tomorrow. But I don't want to keep you up too late. But that is the first trumpet. And I'm glad we went through all we went through to introduce the trumpets, to get you set for that. Because now we go to the second one. You're going to know, remember now, they're in harmony. So you want to look at the second church and you want to look at the second seal. Okay? And you're dealing with the rejectors of the message. Okay? You're dealing with the rejectors of the message. Okay? That's why their prayers are not being heard. They're rejecting the message. Until you get to the sixth one. We're going to talk about that when you get to the sixth one. Okay? And that's why it gets so bad on the earth that we saw from the sixth seal, the question had to be, who is going to be able to stand? Okay, because it's a remnant. It's not the majority by any means. It's the remnant. The dragon's not wroth with everybody. The Bible says the dragon's wroth with the remnant of the woman's seed, and with the woman, that's the 12 tribes. He's enraged at us, as we can see by what has happened to us. Okay, praise the Most High. So we're going to stop here at Revelation 8:7 for now, and we'll come back by the grace of the Most High tomorrow morning Eastern time, and we'll start, with the second, third, fourth. We'll probably go second, third, fourth by the grace of the Most High in the first session, and then do fifth and sixth. Well, fifth and part of sixth in the second session. Six as with the churches and with the seals, so with the trumpets. We're going to take more time on sixth than anything else, because it's where the longest, biggest, most important part of the message is, where 144,000 are. Okay, so we're going to take more time with that. So we'll probably do 4 tomorrow, unless the Spirit does something else. And then we'll do in the morning, and then we'll do 5 and then 6. Okay, 5 and 6. Praise the Most High Yahweh for his grace and mercy toward all of us, because he's given this message to us, because we're the ones. We're living. We're the final generation. We're the final generation. We're living in that final time. See, so he's doing that for us, brethren, to get us prepared. It's not about me. It's not about any teacher, except woe unto me if I don't teach what he's given me, from his word. I'll tell you what, please, again, read this book. Read it through. When you get done with it, read it again. I'm really, my wife and I was talking today, all the years that I've been reading this book, and then especially the last, I would say, maybe 10 or 12 years. I say a good 10 years, where I've been in this truth that we're dealing with now. I hardly meet anybody that has read through this book. I mean, a lot of religious people, and they can pick pieces out of it, and they call it here, there, a little bit, whatever, here a little, there a little, but nobody that's actually read the book. So I am praying the Most High. Please, brethren, read this book. I want this thing to end soon. And for it to end, we need 144,000 of us brothers reading this book. And we need some Gentiles reading this book to teach other Gentiles. Okay? Please read this book. When you finish reading it, starting at Genesis, going through the Revelation, read it again. And keep reading it until somebody takes it from you, stops you from reading it. And that the Most High is giving you the sign that when that happens, you read it. Don't worry about it. But just keep reading this book. Please. Right? Read it. And then read it again. And don't, please, I admonish you, don't look at no other book. You just you need another book. Go get the Strong's Concordance, where you can translate the Hebrew and Greek into English. But other than that, you don't need no other book. Read this one through. Okay. Once you do that, you'll have the standard of truth and righteousness, so that anything else you read, you'll be able to see right through it. Once you read this one. Okay. So read this book through, and then read it again. Praise the Most High. So we're just really, don't worry about it, Don Hines. Don't worry. I told the story, I'm sure you heard it, of the brother I met at age, he was 37 years old at the time. I met this brother. It was like 35. It was before I even married my wife, so almost 40 years ago. And he couldn't read. He stopped school in the 2nd grade to go to work. And he was a construction worker from 7 years old. He was hustling. And then when I met him, he was a construction worker in New York. And he couldn't read. And he was crying. Never forget, me and a brother was there. He was crying. What's wrong, brother? We didn't know what was wrong. We had just did a message in the drug clinic. And he was in the drug clinic for heroin. And what's wrong, brother? What's going on? And he said, man, y'all preaching these words, and these words sound beautiful, but I can't read. And we prayed with him. And I'll never forget the brother with me. He prayed with him, and he said, the Bible says, when you turn at his reproof, he'll make known his words to you. I came back, I don't know how many months later. I came back, I don't know how many months later. And I was going down the hallway to the room that I used to preach from in the drug clinic, in the heroin clinic. And I heard somebody preaching in my room. I don't remember how many months. It wasn't a year. I know that. It wasn't quite a year. Maybe it was a year. I can't remember now. So long ago. But I heard somebody preaching in my room, man. I was like, who is preaching in my room? And the nurse just looked up from her desk and just told me to go in. And I went in there. And there was that same man with a King James Bible in his hand, preaching from the Bible. And when he saw me, he stopped preaching and started crying. He ran up to me and just hugged me. And he said, you was right. I just started praying and I was repenting of my sin and things started making sense and I was able to read it. See, brethren, when I saw that, I knew it's not about education. This man had a second grade. He quit school in the second grade. He didn't know how to read. And the Most High gave him that ability by the Spirit. Okay. So, brethren, don't fret. Don't worry about how fast or slow you do it. It's a year's, it should take a year for most people, but if it takes you 2, the first time I read the Bible, I started at age 12 and finished at age 15. And I was just reading like one thing a day, one psalm, one piece of a psalm, one chapter. And it took me 3 years. That's the first time I read it through. Okay. So don't worry. The Most High will bless you to read it through. Just take your time. Do it whatever the Spirit leads you. If it's a year, some of y'all finish in 6 months. Some of y'all might take a couple of years. It's all right. Just read it. Okay, he'll bless you. Don't worry. Just read. Some parts are hard to read. I know. Pray and just keep reading. He's going to bless your spirit. Don't worry. It's a spiritual exercise. He's going to bless your spirit. Okay? No, don't worry. And don't even, I know it's frustrating. I told my wife this. I lost track of him. We moved from New York many years ago, and I lost track of him. We were ministering together for a while. He fell back into heroin a little bit, and then he came back, and then I lost track of him after that. But I don't know what happened to him. Yeah, his name was Sonny. I don't know what happened to him, but that I'll never forget that. But what was I saying? Yeah, don't worry about how much you retain. It's not for you to worry about that. The Father's Spirit will bring back to your memory what you need. Only thing, let me give you some advice on that. You will come across certain verses that will hit your spirit based on your experience. Okay? It won't be all of them, but there'll be something that hits you. When that happens, that's the one you should retain for then. And you won't have any trouble doing it because it's hitting you. You have to go back and look at it multiple times. You understand? So that's how you do it. Just read through it. And when something hits you, like I do, like I mark certain things. Like I will mark stuff. You'll see my Bible, and I just got this Bible a couple of years ago. But you'll see, like I'll mark it. This thing I marked in there. I don't know if you can see that, but I mark stuff that hits me. See, I'll mark it, and then I'll come back and look at it again when it hits you. Not all verses do it the same way. It depends on what the Most High is speaking to you about. It'll hit you. Yeah. And I just put a little pen mark and I try to underline certain things if it really, and I come back and look at it again. And I know not this, but my old, if I showed you my old Bible, the whole book is marked up. One of the scariest days, man, I left my Bible in the church. When I was a Christian, I was in a church. I left my Bible there and I came back and it was gone. Man, I was interrogating everybody. And somebody said, oh no, I know it. I got it. I know where it is. He said, it's a brown Bible. He said, it's well worn and all marked up. I said, yeah. He said, it's over here. And I got it, man. I'll never leave it out my side again after that. But that one I wore out and I got this one now. So just read it and keep reading it. And when something hits you, when the Spirit touches you with a verse, mark it and just keep going, and that's how you'll accumulate the knowledge. And when it's time, the Most High will regurgitate that from your spirit. Don't worry about it. You'll get it. Just one step at a time. One step at a time. Okay? That's right. There you go. There you go. So don't worry, it's a spiritual exercise. Remember that reading the scriptures is not like studying a college course. It's a spiritual exercise. Okay, it's a spiritual, it's a supernatural exercise. All right, so just remember that the Most High will guide you. He will guide you. He'll bless your way. Don't worry about it. Okay, don't worry about it. Don't say, "Oh, I keep forgetting." No, don't worry about that. He'll get. Don't go. He'll catch you. Don't worry about it. He'll get you. All right. All right. The Most High bless you and keep you, and cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you, and lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. Shalom.